Hey, I'm back with Knut. And here's the picture of him being a superstar, a little model out there getting his picture taken. Yes, let's find out what happens today, okay? For Thomas, who was rather shy, all of this fame was quite surprising. But he did his best to give all his attention to Knut. And all Knut wanted to do was play. So with Knut's favorite green blanket, Thomas and Knut played tug of war, and then Knut clambered on the rocks and wrestled with his ball. He charmed everyone. Day after day, huge crowds came to admire Knut as he played with his keepers and his sticks and balls and teddy bears. As for people's love for Knut grew, many thought about Knut's polar bear cousins in the wild. With temperatures rising around the globe, the icy region where polar bears live are shrinking. Some scientists even believe that polar bears could become extinct during our lifetime. Many of Knut's new friends realized what the world might lose, and they started to ask what they could do to help. They want to help keep polar bears alive up in the Arctic, so that we always have polar bears. We don't want them to go away. Look at what he did to his ball. It looks a little squished, doesn't it? He must have bit it just a little too hard and put a hole in it. His teeth are probably very sharp. With his cute waddle and his playful spirit, it was hard not to love Knut. He received as many as 200 letters each week. He can't read. Why do they write him letters? People of all ages sent poems and other words of friendship. Children who were too young to write, they drew pictures for Knut. Everyone wanted Knut to know how happy he made them feel. One day, visitors worried when rather than playing, Knut laid down on the ground, holding his paws over his eyes or on his swollen cheek. Something happened. Over the next few days, Knut and Thomas didn't make their usual public appearances. Was Knut sick? It turned out that because Knut's permanent teeth were coming in, his mouth was sore. Thomas helped Knut feel better by rubbing his gums and letting Knut cuddle with him when he slept. Before long, Knut was back, as lively and as full of fun as ever. He was getting teeth. Sometimes that hurts. You guys even say it when your teeth are coming in. You say, oh, my tooth is coming in and my mouth hurts. Sometimes that happens. My pages are stuck. Thomas's favorite times with Knut happened away from the crowds. Every morning before the zoo opens, Thomas leads Knut on a walk through the zoo grounds. It was during those early morning walks that Thomas gave Knut his first swimming lessons. Knut already enjoyed wading in shallow water, but when Thomas dove into deep water and called Knut to follow him, Knut hesitated. Thomas patiently encouraged him until Knut finally jumped in. And before long, Knut was swimming around in a polar bear fashion, paddling with his front legs and using his back legs to steer. Just as a bear mother would, Thomas makes sure that Knut's boisterous energy doesn't get out of hand. If Knut grows too impatient before feeding and starts to nip, Thomas will warn him, 9. That means no. Until Knut stops. Usually Knut listens well, and when Thomas calls, Knut, come, Knut always comes running, kind of like a dog when you say, come. Every day, Knut is growing bigger and stronger. By the time Knut is a year old, he will be so big that he could hurt Thomas without even meaning to. It might not be safe for them to play anymore. Thomas and Knut will be together as long as they can, and no matter what, Thomas will stay closely involved in Knut's care until Knut is ready to be independent. Adult polar bears spend most of their time alone, so Knut won't be lonely if it happens that Thomas can no longer be with him every day. And Knut will always be very special to Thomas. And that is the story of Knut, who survived and thrived because of the love and the care of his foster father, Thomas, and the support of the zoo in Berlin. Knut has brought joy to millions around the world, but more importantly, he has reminded us that one small creature can make a big difference. Knut may be just a tiny polar bear cub, but he inspires us to do everything we can to help polar bears in the wild. Together, we can take small actions that will lead to big change. If we all do our part to help save the polar bear's natural habitat and all the natural habitats, we will give Knut's story a very happy ending indeed. So, that is the story of Knut, the polar bear cub. And he is at the Berlin Zoo. There is a little bit of stuff here about polar bears, in case you're wondering. So I thought I would read you the facts about polar bears, okay? More about polar bears. Polar bears are perfectly built to keep cozy in the freezing weather. They have thick fur covering their entire bodies, except the tips of their noses and the bottoms of their paws. This yellowish white coat helps them blend in with the snow and the ice around them. Underneath the fur is a more protection against the cold. It's a layer of blubber, which is fat. There is 3 to 4 inches of fat all over their body. So, ooh, boy, that's a lot. They have a lot of fat. That, Small ears and a short tail also help prevent heat loss. Giant, partly webbed paws are just right for walking across slippery ice or swimming through cold water. Grown-up polar bears are much bigger than baby Knut. Females weigh between 300 and 700 pounds, and males weigh between 700 and 1,600 pounds, about 3 times as much as a lion. They're about 3 times bigger than a lion. Polar bears like to eat meat, especially fatty meat. They need to consume an average of 4.5 pounds of fat every day in order to survive. In the wild, their main source of food is seals. They eat seals. Instead of trying to hunt out at sea, they wait patiently at openings in the sea ice, sheets of ice on top of the seawater, because this is where seals come up to breathe. They can smell a seal from 10 football fields away and under 3 feet of ice. Their sense of smell is so good that some people call polar bears noses with legs. They can smell so good. They're called noses with legs. Unlike other bears, polar bears do not hibernate. Only new mothers and their babies spend long periods of time in dens. A pregnant female scrapes a tunnel in the snow and makes a dark, quiet chamber where she cuddles up to give birth. A litter typically includes between 1, 2, or 3 cubs. And the mother lives with the cubs in the den for 3 to 5 months. During that time, she does not eat any food. She survives only on her fat reservoirs. We talked about that when we talked about the penguins. Remember that daddy penguin who holds the egg on his feet? He doesn't get to eat for 1 whole month, and he has to live on just his fat that he has. Mothers stay with their cubs for between 1 and 3 years until they are able to hunt for themselves. Polar bears make their homes in large open spaces around the Arctic. They roam from Alaska to Russia and from Canada to Greenland. There are no polar bears in the southern hemisphere. So not down where those penguins live. There are no polar bears down there. The Latin name for polar bear is Ursus maritimus, which means sea bear. It's a name that suits polar bears because they spend so much time in the water. They love to swim. Sometimes they wander off the coast on a drifting pack of ice called an ice floe. Polar bears spend most of their time on sea ice because it's the best place to hunt seals. So that's some stuff about polar bears. and this book was Knut. Isn't that a fun story? And it's a real life story. That's fun.